It was 10:03 p.m. on a stormy Thursday in Millfield, Ohio. Rain hammered the cracked pavement, pooling in shallow rivers that reflected the red and blue glow of a cruiser parked too close behind a battered Toyota. Captain Reed Warren's polished boots splashed as he froze beside the driver's window, his flashlight beam cutting through the rain. Behind the wheel sat Simone Mitchell, a 34-year-old public defender who had built her career defending those the system discarded. She didn't flinch at the blinding light in her eyes. Instead, her calm voice carried through the storm. "Captain," she said evenly, "I know exactly what you're planning, because I've been one step ahead of you for 6 months." The words landed heavier than the rain. Reed's smirk faltered, if only for a second, before his mask of authority slid back into place. Simone had learned to control her fear long ago. Courtrooms had trained her face into stillness, even when her heart raced. But this moment wasn't about appearances. It was about survival. For weeks she had driven carefully, avoided shortcuts, made sure her taillights worked. Yet here he was, blocking her path, orchestrating something too precise to be coincidence. Reed's reputation stretched across Millfield. To the public, he was the man who had reduced crime rates by 30%. The captain who posed for photos, shaking hands with mayors, hugging schoolchildren, smiling with pastors at community breakfasts. But Simone knew better. She'd spent months tracing a pattern: innocent people stopped, drugs discovered, lives destroyed, and every case connected back to Reed or his closest officers. Her father, Detective Thomas Mitchell, had chased the same shadows 8 years earlier. Officially, he had taken his own life after cocaine was found in his locker. But Simone never believed that. Reed had whispered at the funeral, leaning close so no one else could hear. "Your father chose the easy way out, smart man." That whisper had ignited a fire she carried into every case since. The rain intensified, drumming against the Toyota's roof. Another patrol car rolled up silently, headlights off. Simone's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Through her side mirror, she saw Officer Daniels emerge, his silhouette moving toward the trunk. A third unmarked vehicle idled across the street, a shadow inside holding still. 3 cars for one broken tail light. "License and registration, Miss Mitchell," Reed said, his tone drenched in professional courtesy. "What's the reason for the stop, Captain Warren?" Her voice remained steady, though her pulse pounded. "Tail lights out. Dangerous in this weather." Her tail lights had been fine when she left the courthouse an hour earlier. She knew this wasn't about a traffic violation. When she lowered her window slightly, Reed leaned closer, his eyes scanning the interior. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "Am I being detained?" "Just a routine check, counselor, unless you've got something to worry about." His hand rested on the holster at his side, casual but deliberate. In her mirror, Simone watched Daniels circle the trunk, one hand pressed against his jacket pocket. She knew what was coming. This was the play her father had warned about in his journals. The rain had chased away potential witnesses, and the intersection had no traffic cameras. Reed had chosen this corner carefully. Simone unlocked the door, her blazer soaking through as she stepped into the storm. Warren positioned himself between her and his cruiser, blocking her view. "I'm going to search your vehicle," he announced. "You don't have probable cause," Simone countered. "I don't consent to a search." Reed's eyes narrowed. "I detected the odor of marijuana when you rolled down your window. That gives me probable cause." The lie slid from his tongue like second nature. Daniels popped the trunk. Simone strained to see past Reed, but his broad shoulders blocked her. Through the sheets of rain, she caught the briefest glimpse. Daniels slipping a plastic bag from his jacket, tucking it beneath the trunk's carpet lining. Her chest tightened. This was it. The setup that had ruined so many lives. "Captain," Daniels called out, his voice rising over the rain, "you might want to take a look at this." Warren's lips twitched with the faintest smile before hardening into stern professionalism. He turned to her. "Keep an eye on her," he told another officer, who shifted uneasily. For a split second, Simone met his gaze. Shame flickered there. Simone raised her voice deliberately, loud enough to cut through the storm. "I know what you're doing. This is a setup, and I want the world to hear it." The shadow across the street lifted a phone, its faint glow revealing a recording in progress. Warren stepped forward, holding up a sealed Ziploc bag filled with white powder. 3 kilos, Street value, over $150,000. His eyes gleamed. "Would you care to explain this, Miss Mitchell?" Simone met his stare, rain running down her face like tears. "That is not mine, and you know it." The officer's grip tightened on her arm as cold metal handcuffs bit into her wrists. Simone shouts, "You're doing this because of my father, because I've been investigating you." Reed leans close, whispering just for her, "And like your father, you'll never prove it." Rain needled Simone's cheeks as the cuffs cinched down. The younger officer kept his eyes on the asphalt, as if the ground could swallow the guilt pooling at his boots. Reed Warren didn't bother with pretenses anymore. With the bag now found, he adjusted his hat, squared to the camera he knew would arrive, and dialed a number with the ease of a man who never heard the word no. They walked her past the trunk she wasn't allowed to see, toward the back seat of the cruiser. The vinyl was cold, the partition glass smelled like bleach and stale fear. Reed leaned in, voice dipped in honey for the body mic that wasn't on. "You know procedure, counselor. This will be quick if you cooperate." Simone met her reflection in the glass. Calm eyes, steady shoulders. Fair breathing metronome. She'd practiced this. There would be no begging, no bargains, only facts collected, dated, backed up. The cruiser door slammed. Darkness swallowed the edges of the street. Through rain-streaked glass she tracked the silhouettes. One officer bagging her purse, one photographing the scene, one posted at the corner with a radio glued to his cheek. Across the way, the same dim rectangle of a phone hovered in a storefront. Not police, someone else, someone recording. She closed her eyes and pictured her father's hands, steady, broad, always warm even after midnight shifts. Never let panic choose for you, Thomas Mitchell had taught her at the kitchen table, case files sharing space with math homework. Fear's loud. Truth is patient. Make truth louder. 8 years ago, truth had been drowned out by a twist of keys and a metal locker door. The official line read suicide. The unofficial line read whispered. Reed Warren's voice at the gravesite, too close, too soft, had slithered into the cracks of grief and turned to steel. Simone carried that steel to law school, to arraignment courts, to cramped conference rooms where clients signed pleas they didn't deserve because they couldn't afford to fight. She carried it now, cuffed, soaked, but unbroken. Red, blue, red pulsed across the windshield as a second cruiser rolled forward to block the lane. A tow truck idled up the block. They were staging the tableau: order, professionalism, decisive service. Millfield would wake to headlines about a defender caught, a captain vigilant, a department cleaning up the streets. Millfield loved a clean story. It was a Rust Belt town with a long memory and short patience. Old factories sat like hulks against the river. Neighborhoods split themselves by habit and history. City halls sold ribbon cuttings with borrowed confetti. Churches held pancake breakfasts and prayer circles for unity. On billboards, Reed Warren shook hands with a mayor who owed him a re-election speech. On local news, he toured after-school programs, handed out helmets, promised safer nights. In internal affairs, complaints fell into cracks between forms and never climbed out again. The radio on the dash crackled. Evidence collected, transport approved. A voice Simone didn't recognize. She studied the younger officer in the driver's seat, jaw tight, knuckles paled around the steering wheel. He glanced at the mirror, caught her eyes, looked away fast. "First traffic stop?" Simone asked softly. His grip tightened. "Don't talk." "Then listen," she said, even softer. "Every time you watch it happen and say nothing, you become it." His throat worked. He didn't answer. Outside, Reed finished his call, slipped his phone away and checked his watch like he was counting down to a press conference. The rain eased to a fine hiss. A woman hurried past under a clear umbrella, slowed at the sight of the cruisers, then sped up, head down. A bus sighed at the corner, and then lumbered on, windows fogged with the breath of people who would later tell co-workers what they thought they'd seen. Simone's own phone, now sealed in an evidence bag, had already done what it needed to do long before it left her pocket. Audio, timestamps, triggers. There were mirrors to every device. There were backups to the backups. There were places even men like Reed never thought to look, because they'd never had to. The door opened. Reed filled the frame, rain beading on the brim of his hat. He spoke for show now, vowels crisp, volume just right. Ms. Mitchell, you are under arrest for possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. You will be afforded all your constitutional rights. All of them? Simone asked. Even the ones you hate? Something flashed behind his eyes and then was gone. The mask snapped back on. He shut the door with a practiced gentleness, in control, always in control, and signaled the driver. They pulled away, tires whispering over slick pavement. Simone watched the intersection shrink, then vanish. In its place rose the lattice of her city, the all-night gas station with the bored clerk counting scratch-offs, the payday lender glowing like a trap, the attorney's offices with one working lamp, the courthouse dome smudged against the sky. Memory tugged. Maya in a thrifted blazer, 19 and fearless, sneaking into the back row of her first big trial to watch her older sister take apart a sloppy chain of custody with nothing but questions and persistence. Afterward, on the courthouse steps, their father had wrapped an arm around each of them and said, "Every step you take, make it a step someone else can follow. Every step, even this one." She rolled her shoulders against the cuffs, testing skin and steel. Pain sparked and faded. She marked the route out of habit. East on Warren, south on Grant. Irony didn't even bother to hide here. Then 2 more lights to the county detention center with its flickering sodium lamps and peeling paint. "Booking," the younger officer muttered, like he needed to remind himself it was routine. Routine had a script: remove jewelry, shoes, dignity, stand for the camera, answer questions designed to sound neutral and land hard. Routine had a hum: fluorescent lights, distant televisions, the echo of doors that never quite closed quietly. Routine had a smell: disinfectant, wet wool, nerves. But routine also had seams. And seams, once you found them, could be unpicked. In the parking lot, as the cruiser rolled to a stop, Simone caught a final slice of sky between buildings. The rain had thinned to a fine silver mesh. A single flash, faint, elevated, winked from a rooftop 2 blocks away, not a siren, not lightning. A lens-catching streetlight. Someone was still watching. They escorted her through double doors into a corridor the color of old paper. Footsteps multiplied. Voices rose and fell. An intake officer with a clipboard and a long day looked up at her name, did a double-take, and smoothed it into indifference. "Remove personal items," he said. "Necklace, watch, earrings." Simone stared at the small, scuffed watch face resting against her skin. Her father's, weightless most days, suddenly heavy now, like a secret remembering itself. She unclasped it and placed it gently into a grey plastic tray. The intake officer scribbled, bagged it, sealed it with a sticker that crackled as air squeezed out. The younger officer signed a chain of custody log with a hand that shook once and stopped. On the wall above the counter, a cheap television cycled headlines in a crawl. "Crime down 30% under Captain Warren. New community center ribbon cutting Monday. Storms expected through the weekend." The anchor's teeth gleamed like answers that never cost anything. They moved her to a bench. Metal, cold, bolted. A woman 2 seats away hugged herself and hummed without realizing. Another muttered a prayer into her sleeve. Somewhere behind the door at the end of the hall, a phone rang, and then cut off halfway into a fourth. A guard pointed. "Mugshot." She stepped onto taped footprints, stared into a lens that didn't blink, and let it see what it wanted while she kept what mattered tucked in the quiet center of herself. Flash. Another angle. Flash. Turn. Flash. Back on the bench, she let the hum and whirl of the place pass through her. She replayed the street in her mind, frame by frame, the bag, the hand, the angle of Reed's shoulder, the exact wording of his lie. She filed each detail where it belonged. She waited. The door at the end of the hall opened. A man in a suit stepped through, rain speckling his shoulders, eyes scanning for a camera that wasn't there. Not her attorney. Not a public defender, not a cop. He carried himself like someone who knew rooms before he entered them. He stopped in front of her, clipped tone low. "Ms. Mitchell, my name is—" "I know who you are," she said quietly. "And I know why you're here." The intake officer slid a form across the counter. "Confirm your personal effects," he said, not quite meeting Simone's eyes. In the grey tray, necklace, small stud earrings, a scuffed leather wallet, and her father's watch sealed in a clear bag, the sticker still damp from the rain. "I'd like a copy of the inventory," Simone said. Her voice was even, courtroom clean, "and I want the case number written on the property log legible." The officer hesitated, then scribbled, tore off a yellow slip, and tucked it under the bag. The younger cop, same tight jaw from the car, initialed the chain of custody. His pen scratched harder than it needed to. A metal door buzzed. A guard gestured. Female holding. The room echoed with the metallic scrape of benches and the soft private noises of fear. Humming, breath-counting, shoes rubbing the floor in little circles. Simone sat. A woman 2 seats over looked up, eyes bright with recognition. "You're that lawyer," she said. "Public defender." "Was," Simone replied, because accuracy had a way of keeping panic out. "What's your name?" "Tasha." The woman's wrists were cuffed in front, red marks blooming at the edges. "They said they found meth in my glove box last fall. I've been telling them it wasn't mine since the day they pulled me over." "How'd they stop you?" "Rolling stop." Tasha's mouth tugged. "Except I don't run stop signs because I can't afford to fix my bumper if I get hit. They had the bag ready, like they knew exactly where my box latch was going to stick." Simone listened the way she listened to clients. Beneath the words inside the cadence where people filed the details they weren't sure mattered. Who was on the stop? Captain Warren rolled up second. The first guy was Daniels. Third came later, plain car. Tasha's gaze flicked to the clock. Judge denied bail. My public defender had 14 other cases that morning. Pattern, same names, same choreography, same time pressure that strangled the truth. The door buzzed again. A guard called her last name and pointed to a phone behind bulletproof glass. Attorney. Price from the defender's office looked like a man who hadn't slept since budget hearings. He picked up the receiver, eyes scanning, shoulders hunched in against the fluorescent hum. "I'm on record for you," he said, voice low. "We'll fight the narrative, but Wilson's already on camera. They're pushing arraignment fast. They'll say chain of custody is clean and the trunk search was probable cause," Simone said. "They'll move to hold my devices as the alleged network hub." Price nodded. "We'll request independent forensics, but grants on the calendar tomorrow. Odds aren't our friend." Simone breathed once, slow. "2 things. First, I need the booking property inventory copied, especially the watch. Make sure that watch is catalogued exactly as received." Price glanced at the paper she slid under the glass, his brow furrowing. "The watch is important?" "It's sentimental," she said for the room. For Price, she added, "and time-sensitive." He took the hint. "What's the second thing?" "If the clerk stonewalls discovery, file anyway. Even if he denies, it timestamps our request. And call my sister, Maya. Tell her to check Dad's fishing box." He wrote it down. "You think they'll let me talk to her without flagging it?" "They'll flag everything," Simone said. "We talk anyway." A guard tapped the glass. Time. Price stood, softened his mouth into something like encouragement, and vanished back into hallways that swallowed allies. Back on the bench, Simone let the room blur so the map inside her could sharpen. She pictured the intersection, the storefront across the street, the rectangle of a phone held too still to be casual. If the camera caught Daniels's shoulder angle, the trunk line, the hand going under the carpet, if it would be enough to change tempo, not the tune. A single incident never beat a system. But a single incident could pry up the first tile. She replayed the watch. Small, reliable, running a minute fast like her father preferred. "So you arrive ready," he used to say. Months of audio lived not in the watch, but in what the watch touched. A micro SD hidden in the adjustment slot, too ordinary for curiosity. The failsafe wasn't the card either. It was the cadence, her cadence. Every night for half a year, Simone had tapped the watch the same way. An old habit turned into a heartbeat the server listened for. Miss 3 check-ins, the backups moved. Miss 5, the backups shouted. She had missed one tonight by design. 2 more would be inevitable. The system would wake. Maya would know where to look. Over by the door, the younger cop appeared again, paper in hand, eyes studiously not on her. He spoke to the guard, left the paper, turned to go. He paused, just long enough for his gaze to catch the sealed bag on the property shelf where the intake officer had set it and not yet filed it. Simone watched him see it. watched uncertainty tug at his mouth. He left without speaking. A buzzer growled. "Mitchell," the guard called. "Move." They processed her again. Prints, contact sheet, questions with only one acceptable answer, no matter how politely they asked them. She gave what the system demanded and kept what it couldn't recognize safe. Order, sequence, the stubborn refusal to let someone else narrate her life. By the time they led her toward the row of cells, the rain had thinned to a memory drumming in her clothes. She stepped into a rectangle of cinder block and steel, a bunk with a mattress that remembered too many backs. Across the corridor, a TV glowed, local news looping Reed's statement from some dry, well-lit podium. Words like betrayal and disappointed and integrity floated through the bars like cheap air freshener. Simone sat on the bunk, closed her eyes and matched her breath to the second hand she'd worn for a decade. Outside, Millfield believed a story about a captain saving a city. Inside, she counted beats. Tonight was not an ending. It was an opening move. The clang of the cell door echoed down the corridor. Simone sat on the narrow bunk, damp clothes clinging to her skin, her pulse steadying only because she forced it to. She replayed the night in her head. The rain, the trunk, Daniel's hand. Memory wasn't just comfort, it was evidence, and evidence had to be catalogued in sequence. Across the hallway, a television bolted to the wall flickered. Captain Reed Warren stood at a podium under bright lights, his uniform crisp, his voice solemn. It's always troubling when someone entrusted with justice betrays that trust. Ms. Mitchell's arrest is disappointing, but it proves no one is above the law. The cell block buzzed with murmurs. Some women laughed bitterly, others stared in silence. To them, Simone was no longer the lawyer who tried to fight for them. She was proof the system swallowed anyone it wanted. A guard approached. Visitation, 10 minutes. Through thick glass, Simone faced her sister Maya, who clutched a notebook the way a drowning woman clings to a board. Maya's eyes were sharp, urgent. "They're already moving to suspend your license," she whispered into the phone. "Wilson's office filed the petition this morning. You won't be able to argue any cases until this is over." "That's the plan," Simone answered. Her tone was calm, but her knuckles whitened around the receiver. "They want my clients defenseless and they want me erased." Maya leaned closer. "What do I do?" Simone kept her gaze steady, knowing cameras were pointed at them. "Go to Dad's old tackle box. You'll find something hidden there. It'll explain everything." The guard tapped his watch. Time was short. "One more thing," Simone added quickly. "Check for a company called Clearwater Holdings. It's the key." Maya's lips tightened around the name, memorizing it like scripture. She mouthed, "I've got you," before the guard led her away. Back in the cell, Simone met the eyes of Tasha, the woman she'd spoken to earlier. Tasha leaned closer on her bunk across the bars. "They did this to my brother last year," she whispered. "Stopped him on 4th Avenue. Said they found heroin. He's still upstate." Simone studied her. "Same officers?" Tasha nodded. "Warren, Daniels, always them, always the same story." Patterns. Simone felt the chain linking case to case. Her father's notes had pointed here, and now the truth spread like cracks in glass. That night, as the lights dimmed for count, Simone's thoughts turned from survival to strategy. "They think I'm cornered. They don't see the board the way I do." Morning came too quickly. A deputy escorted her to a small interview room. Waiting there was a man she didn't recognize. Broad shoulders, plain suit, the kind of presence that carried authority without a badge on display. "Miss Mitchell," he said, sliding into the chair. "Name's Luke Henderson. Recently transferred here from Chicago PD." Simone lifted an eyebrow. "And why should I care?" He lowered his voice. "Because I've seen things. Evidence disappearing. Reports altered. Body cam footage edited. I think you already know who's behind it." "Captain Warren?" Simone said flatly. Henderson's jaw tightened. "I can't say that, yet. But internal affairs isn't clean. If you think filing complaints will save you, don't. They'll bury them." Simone studied him for a long beat. Was he a lifeline or bait? "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I know your father's case. Thomas Mitchell didn't kill himself. He was closing in on something bigger. I think Warren made sure the trail died with him." Her chest tightened. Hearing her father's name from a stranger was both confirmation and wound. Before she could answer, the door opened. Reed himself stepped inside, his presence filling the room like a storm. "Officer Henderson," he said smoothly, "your shift's over. Leave us." Henderson's eyes flicked once to Simone, a silent warning, before he obeyed. Reed sat across from her, smile practiced. "How are the accommodations? Not quite your usual courtroom, but perhaps fitting." Simone didn't blink. "Planting evidence doesn't make you powerful. It makes you predictable." He leaned in. "Predictable wins. Monday you'll be arraigned, denied bail, and fast-tracked to trial. By this time next week you'll be convicted. That's not power, that's inevitability." She leaned closer until the chain at her wrist rattled. "You've made one mistake, Captain. You think I didn't plan for this?" For the first time his smile thinned. The guard returned, ending the meeting. But the air between them was charged now. Two players staring across the same board, both convinced they knew the winning move. That night, back in her cell, Simone whispered to herself words her father once told her. "Never play defense when the system sets the rules. Create your own board." For the first time since the arrest, she let herself smile, small but certain, because Reed had accelerated the game, and that meant his hands were finally visible. And tomorrow, the counterplay begins. The jail cafeteria smelled of burnt coffee and boiled vegetables. Simone carried her tray, grey beans, a roll hard enough to crack teeth, and sat across from Tasha. Around them, conversations flickered in low, wary tones. Guards leaned on the walls, scanning faces with boredom sharpened into suspicion. "You looked like you knew that cop," Tasha said, tearing her bread. "The one in the suit." "Luke Henderson," Simone answered. "Transferred from Chicago. Says he's seen things." "Or says what he needs to say to make you talk," Tasha muttered. "Warren doesn't let strangers walk around unsupervised, not unless they're useful to him." Simone's eyes lingered on the guards. "I know, that's why I didn't give him anything." But the mention of her father still rang in her chest like a bell she couldn't silence. Later, during rec time, Simone found herself in the yard. Concrete walls rose around the patch of asphalt, topped with coils of razor wire. Clouds hung low, pressing the sky down. Henderson approached from the far gate, a clipboard in hand like any officer on duty. "You shouldn't be here," she said without turning. "I had to see you again," he replied. "Last night was rushed. Cameras, Reed hovering. But I want you to know I'm not playing games. I'm working with people who want Reed down." Simone folded her arms. "Prove it." He slipped a folded paper from his pocket and slid it against the fence rail. "That's a copy of Reed's patrol car GPS. Every trip he's made in the last 3 months. Notice the pattern. Late nights, same warehouse district, same unit number every time." Simone scanned it quickly. Dates, times, coordinates. "Unit 17, West Side Storage." Her pulse quickened. That name was already buried in her father's notes. She looked up sharply. "Where did you get this?" "Internal affairs logs," Henderson said. "But don't ask me how." "If you know that address, then you know this isn't just about you." Her throat tightened. If this was real, it confirmed her father's suspicions. If it was bait tailored for her. That night, Maya sat in her apartment, the tackle box open on the kitchen table. Lures glinted under the lamp, bright colors dulled by dust. Beneath the foam liner, her fingers brushed a waterproof bag. Inside, a USB drive scratched but intact. She plugged it into her laptop, password prompt. She tried her father's badge number, denied. Their mother's birthday, denied. Then she typed Reed. The screen unlocked. Hundreds of files appeared, property records, surveillance notes, testimony transcripts, and one folder labeled Clearwater. Maya opened it and froze. Shipping manifests, offshore accounts. Photos of Reed near the same warehouse Henderson had mentioned. Her chest tightened. Dad was right, he had it all. Back at the jail, Simone sat awake on the bunk, the weight of the day pressing on her chest. Henderson's words. Maya's determination, her father's shadow. If Henderson's telling the truth, the board just widened. If he's lying, Reed is already 3 moves ahead. From the hallway, footsteps echoed. The guard slid a note under her door. Folded, no signature. She opened it in the dim light. "Reed has someone inside the FBI. Trust only Henderson. Trust no one else." Simone exhaled slowly. The trap was bigger than she thought, but so was the game she was about to play. Rain lashed against Maya's apartment windows as she packed a bag with hurried hands. The USB drive her father had hidden lay warm in her pocket, its secrets too big to leave behind. She checked the street from the blinds. Dark sedan, 2 men inside, pretending not to watch. She whispered to herself, "They know already." She dialed Sarah Parker, her college friend turned forensic accountant. "I need help. Tonight." "Where?" "Dad's cabin," Maya said. "Come alone. Don't tell anyone." The cabin sat 20 miles outside Millfield, surrounded by pines that moaned under the storm. By lantern light, Maya spread files across the old wooden table. Sarah leaned over manifests and bank records. "These shipping weights don't match the furniture they claim to import," Sarah said. "Every box is heavy going in, light coming out. It's not furniture. It's cocaine." Maya swallowed hard. Her father had died for this truth. Meanwhile, Simone pressed her forehead to the cool cinder-block wall of her cell. Through the slot in the door, a guard slid her dinner, dry meatloaf, watery beans. She ignored it. Her mind replayed Henderson's warning. Reed has someone inside the FBI. If that was true, then going to federal authorities could backfire. But Henderson's GPS logs matched her father's records. And now if Maya had found the tackle box. Simone closed her eyes, picturing her sister's stubborn face. "She's my last move left on the outside." The next morning, Maya walked into the courthouse lobby with her press badge displayed. Reed was already there, shaking hands with reporters, his voice solemn. Cameras flashed as he said, "Our community deserves trust. No one is above the law." Maya held her phone higher, recording. For once, she didn't hide. Reed's eyes caught hers across the crowd. His smile faltered, just slightly, but enough. She had rattled him. Back at the jail, Simone met her court-appointed attorney. Price looked weary, files spilling from his briefcase. "They're moving fast," he said. "Arraignment tomorrow. Bail request already denied." Simone leaned closer. "Then we slow them down. File motions even if they get denied. Each one leaves a trail, and check my booking property, especially the watch. Make sure it's listed." Price blinked, confused, but nodded. That night in the cabin, Sarah leaned back from the laptop. "Maya, these accounts connect Reed to offshore banks, and Clearwater Holdings isn't even a real company. It's a shell. Your father was building a RICO case." Maya's throat tightened. Dad wasn't paranoid, he was right. She whispered into the storm outside, "If you believe Simone should never have gone through this injustice, type justice in the comments below." And somewhere across Millfield, a plan began to take shape. One that could either free Simone or bury both sisters for good. Maya walked fast through downtown Millfield, her coat pulled tight against the wind. The USB drive never left her pocket. She kept her phone raised, recording storefront reflections just in case anyone was behind her. And someone was. A black SUV had shadowed her since the courthouse. She ducked into the Gazette building, her press badge granting her entry. But as she reached the lobby, the SUV eased to the curb. The window slid down. Captain Reed Warren sat inside, framed in leather and arrogance. "Ms. Mitchell," he called, voice casual, like they were old acquaintances. "Step in, let's talk." Her pulse spiked, but her stride didn't falter. "I don't take rides with men who frame my sister." The SUV door opened anyway. Reed stepped out, immaculate in uniform despite the storm, and fell in beside her on the sidewalk. Cameras weren't around this time. They moved toward a small park across the street. Empty benches glistened with rain. Reed walked close enough for his voice to stay low. "Your sister faces 20 years, he said evenly, "but she doesn't have to. Plead guilty, cooperate, and she could be out in 5. Maya laughed bitterly. "You mean stop digging, stop exposing you?" His smile vanished. "I know about the cabin, about Parker, about that IT kid, Rodriguez. You think the woods keep secrets? I see everything." Maya froze mid-step. He knew their names. He knew the location. Reed leaned close, his breath warm in the cold air. Accidents happen in prison, especially to ex-lawyers who embarrass the wrong people. Convince Simone to take the deal, or next week there won't be a trial to attend. Back at the cabin, Maya slammed the door behind her, drenched and shaking. Sarah looked up from the table, alarmed. "What happened?" He knows, Maya whispered. Everything, the cabin, you, Alex. He threatens Simone's life if I don't stop. Sarah's face hardened. Then we're closer than I thought. They only threaten when they're afraid. Maya pulled the USB drive from her pocket. We can't wait anymore. We need every victim he's framed, every story. Pattern cases don't lie. That night, Alex Rodriguez cross-referenced court records with Reed's known arrests. He laid photos and files across the cabin floor. Look, he said, pointing. Marcus Johnson, community organizer, arrested last year. Elena Martinez, schoolteacher, arrested after filing a complaint. Same officers, same mystery drugs, same denial of bail. Maya traced the list with trembling fingers. 5 names so far, plus Tasha, plus Simone. 7 people in 3 years. Sarah exhaled. That's not corruption, that's enterprise, that's systemic. Maya's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it ring out, but Sarah urged her to answer. Her voice crackled. Henderson. It's happening tomorrow night, a major shipment. Reed himself is overseeing, 5 million in product. Where? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Warehouse, Unit 17. Same as your father's notes. I'll get Harris to wear a wire. But listen, Reed knows he's being watched. He'll accelerate everything. The call ended. Maya looked at Sarah, the files spread across the floor, and the storm outside. Reed had made his threat. Now she had a choice. Step back or step fully into her father's unfinished war. The cabin was alive with quiet urgency. Files covered every surface, laptops hummed, and the storm outside thrashed against the windows like it wanted in. Maya sat at the table, staring at the USB drive, her father's handwriting in her memory, Clearwater Holdings. Unit 17. Sarah Parker tapped her laptop, pulling up satellite maps. West Side storage, security cameras at each corner, private property. If Reed's using it, there'll be movement at night. Alex Rodriguez lifted a black case onto the table and unzipped it. Inside a drone, industrial grade, with infrared capability. 4 hours of flight time, silent above 200 feet. We'll know if anything's happening. Maya exhaled. Then we don't sleep tonight. At 1:57 a.m., the drone lifted into the air, slicing through rain and fog. On Alex's monitor, the warehouse came into view, a hulking metal shell with faint security lights glowing at the corners. Nothing yet, Sarah whispered. Minutes crawled. At 2:17, headlights cut through the mist. 3 police cruisers rolled up, parking tight against the bay door. Maya's heart hammered. That's him, she breathed. Captain Reed Warren stepped out first, umbrella tilted against the storm. Behind him, Daniels carried a duffel. 2 more officers followed, faces blurred but uniforms sharp. The drone camera zoomed in. They unlocked the warehouse and disappeared inside. For long minutes the screen showed only rain dripping off corrugated steel. Then movement. Reed emerging again, duffel bags now gone, replaced with envelopes in his hand. He handed them out like paychecks. Payoffs, Sarah whispered, recording everything. This isn't just planting evidence, they're redistributing confiscated cocaine. Alex's fingers flew across the keyboard. Running facial recognition. He froze, then cursed softly. One of the men isn't a beat cop, it's Lieutenant Phillips. Maya's head snapped toward him. Head of Internal Affairs? Alex nodded grimly. The guy supposed to be investigating Reed is working with him. On the screen, Reed shook Phillips's hand. Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces clearly enough for the drone's lens to capture. Then the men climbed back into their cruisers and disappeared into the storm. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hiss of rain against glass. Sarah sat back. Now we know. Reed's corruption runs straight through Internal Affairs. Maya pressed her palms against the table, steadying herself. If Internal Affairs is compromised, then no one inside Millfield PD can be trusted. Her phone buzzed violently on the wood. She picked it up. The number was unfamiliar, but her gut told her who it was. Henderson. His voice was a whisper, edged with urgency. I found something else. Reed's planning a shipment tomorrow night. $5 million in cocaine, it's his biggest yet, and Harris has agreed to wear a wire. Maya's throat went dry. Tomorrow night? That's less than 24 hours. Yes. And if Simone's trial starts Monday, this is his endgame. He'll be untouchable after that. The line clicked dead. Maya stared at the monitor, where the warehouse stood dark and silent again. But the image of Phillips shaking Reed's hand seared itself into her mind. The man meant to protect the truth was the one burying it deepest. Sunday morning pressed grey light through the narrow cell window. Simone sat upright on her bunk, hair damp from a restless night, the metal cuffs at her wrists leaving faint bruises. She had stopped pacing hours ago. Now she waited, measuring each breath like a countdown. The guard rapped the bars. "Mitchell, attorney visit." They led her into the small booth, glass smeared with fingerprints from countless other desperate conversations. Price, her weary, court-appointed lawyer, shuffled papers into a stack, eyes heavy but alive with something new. "They've expedited everything," he said into the receiver. "Arraignment tomorrow, trial Monday." Reed's pressing for fast-track conviction. Simone leaned closer, her voice even. "Then we make a move today." Price frowned. "With what?" "Discovery is blocked. Bail is gone. Every motion denied." "Not every motion," Simone replied. "Request an audit of my booking property. Especially my watch. Make sure it's logged properly." Price blinked, confused. "The watch?" "Yes. It belonged to my father. More importantly, it holds something Reed doesn't know exists." That evening, Maya and Sarah huddled in the cabin while Alex worked the drone footage frame by frame. The paused image showed Reed handing Phillips an envelope, lightning catching the exchange. "This is damning," Sarah said. "But if the FBI mole Henderson warned us about is real, dropping this footage now could compromise everything." Maya rubbed her temples. Simone mentioned the watch again. She was careful, deliberate. Dad gave it to her. If she hid something inside, Alex turned in his chair, then that's the leverage she's been waiting on. The phone rang, an unlisted number. Henderson's voice hissed through static. "Reed's accelerating. Harris is wired. Shipment's set for tonight, 11 sharp, but listen, internal affairs is compromised at the top. If you bring this evidence to the wrong desk, it disappears forever." Inside the jail, Simone replayed her plan like scripture. For months, she'd worn her father's old watch as though it were only sentimental. Few noticed the scuffed leather band, the small adjustment slot no wider than a fingernail. Hidden inside was a micro SD card containing 6 months of recordings. Every meeting, every time Reed's officers circled her clients, every whisper that proved the pattern. But the card wasn't the true fail-safe. The fail-safe was coded into her routine. Every 3 days, Simone tapped the watch face in a rhythm only Maya knew. Those taps triggered uploads to a secure server. If she missed the rhythm 3 times, the files cascaded out to multiple destinations: federal prosecutors, journalists, watchdog groups, and she had missed twice already. After dinner, the cell block dimmed. Guards clattered down the corridor, keys jangling. Tasha leaned from her bunk across the bars. "You're not like the rest of us. You came in ready." "I had to be," Simone answered. "Then tell me this. Why would Reed risk framing the daughter of the man he destroyed? Seems reckless." Simone's jaw tightened. "Because if he breaks me, he erases my father for good." Tasha studied her in silence, then nodded slowly. "Then don't let him win." Monday loomed like a storm front. Simone sat back against the wall, heartbeat steady, lips pressed into a faint, deliberate smile. "Reed thinks he's writing my ending, but he doesn't realize my father and I started this story years ago." She lifted her wrist, eyes on the second hand ticking forward. "And when the watch strikes again, so will I." The courthouse steps gleamed with rainwater, cameras already staked in position for Monday's spectacle. Inside, reporters swarmed the lobby, trading rumors like currency. The story was set. Public defender turned trafficker. Reed had orchestrated it perfectly, until now. In a back room of the county jail, Simone sat across from Henderson. The guard posted at the door pretended to read a newspaper, but Henderson kept his voice low. "Harris agreed to wear the wire," he said. "He's rattled, but he's in. Tonight at 11, Reed moves the shipment. If Harris records him, it's enough to put cracks in the wall." "And if Harris panics?" Simone asked. "Then he dies in the dark," Henderson said flatly. "That's why you need to hold your move until we confirm. Reed has too many eyes in the system. Simone's stare was unbroken. I've been holding for 8 years. Tonight, the game ends. That evening at the cabin, Maya typed furiously, cross-referencing her father's files with Alex's footage. Sarah leaned over her shoulder. These offshore transfers line up with every seizure the department made in the last 9 years, Sarah said. Reed's been redistributing drugs longer than anyone guessed. This isn't just corruption. It's organized crime under the badge. Maya nodded, her voice sharp with conviction. Then we expose it, and we don't wait for permission. She turned to the camera set up on the table, recording for an audience she couldn't see yet. Stories of justice inspire people everywhere, she said, eyes steady. Comment your city and country below. We want to see how far this truth can travel. Back at the jail, Simone's attorney Price rushed into the attorney booth, face pale. Behind him trailed a woman in a tailored Navy suit, Eden Richmond, assistant U.S. attorney. Price almost dropped his briefcase. They expedited a federal presence, he stammered. Richmond set a folder on the table, her tone calm but electric. Ms. Mitchell, I've been following your father's case since the day he requested a meeting in Chicago. What you're facing is bigger than state charges. We believe Captain Warren's operation crosses into federal RICO territory. Simone's lips parted. Then you know what's in play. Richmond's eyes narrowed. What I need is what you've kept hidden. You have evidence. Simone didn't confirm, didn't deny. She leaned forward. Bring me my watch from booking, then we'll talk. For the first time since her arrest, she saw the balance shift just slightly, but enough to know Reed wasn't untouchable anymore. And outside in the storm-slick streets of Millfield, Reed prepared for a shipment that might be his last. The rain over Millfield had not stopped for 3 days. Streets glistened with standing water, storm drains gurgled, and every storefront awning dripped steady as a metronome. At 10:45 p.m., the city's east side was nearly empty, except for the shadows moving toward the old riverfront warehouses. Unit 17 sat in the middle row, a hulking shell of corrugated steel streaked with rust. Its floodlights flickered weakly, throwing uneven cones of light onto the loading dock. In the darkness, a quarter-mile away, a black van idled. Inside, Alex guided the drone controller while Sarah monitored the feed. Maya sat between them, her father's files spread across her lap, her phone recording everything. At 10:59, 3 cruisers approached from different directions and stopped nose to tail at the warehouse gate. Doors opened. Reed Warren emerged first, umbrella snapping against the rain. Daniels at his side hauling a heavy duffel. 2 more officers flanked them, their faces clear in the drone's infrared camera. Got them, Alex whispered, breath fogging the window. The drone zoomed. Reed's silver hair glistened under the security lights. He moved with the ease of a man convinced of his invincibility. From the cabin, Sarah's voice stayed calm but taut. Look at the bags, no evidence seals, no tags, they're transporting raw product. Maya leaned forward. Keep recording, every angle. On the monitor, Reed unlocked the padlock, swung the bay door open and waved his men inside. They vanished into the dark interior. Minutes later, silhouettes returned without the duffels. This time Reed carried a metal briefcase. He snapped it open under the awning. Envelopes slid out, thick, rubber-banded, distributed to each man. Blood rushed in Maya's ears. That's payroll. They're selling the seizures back onto the street. Alex froze mid-keystroke. Wait, look at the third man. The drone zoomed again, lightning cracked, bleaching the frame. Maya's breath caught. Phillips. Sarah's voice sharpened. Head of Internal Affairs. The man who buries every complaint. They watched as Reed and Phillips shook hands, water streaming from their coats, money changing hands. The image seared itself into the drone's memory card. Meanwhile, in the jail, Simone sat in an interview room. Henderson leaned against the wall, listening to a tiny radio transmitter buzzing in his ear. It's happening now, he said. Harris is wired, standing 15 feet from Reed, the Bureau's monitoring. But they won't move until they tie Reed directly to distribution. We need him in possession. Simone's wrists rested on the table, shackles glinting in fluorescent light. They'll get it. Reed doesn't know how to stop. Henderson's jaw worked. He's suspicious. If he smells a setup, Harris is dead. Simone's eyes burned steady. Then you better make sure Harris walks out alive. Because if he doesn't, Reed doesn't just go down for corruption, he goes down for murder. Back at the warehouse, the deal deepened. A nondescript box truck rolled up, its license plate angled to avoid cameras. Two men in civilian clothes jumped out, received the keys from Daniels, and backed into the bay. The drone camera followed. Packages changed hands. Reed supervised, arms crossed, head tilted with casual authority. Harris's wire captured every word. 5 million street value, Reed said. You move it by Sunday. Nobody touches this route without me. Sarah's hands trembled as she checked the live transcript printing on the laptop. That's it. That's conspiracy in his own voice. Maya's throat tightened. Dad's case. 8 years of silence. And now we finally have his words. Suddenly Reed's head snapped up. He scanned the perimeter like he felt the weight of eyes on him. Check the lot, he barked. Officers fanned out, flashlights slicing the rain. Alex's voice broke. He knows. He'll find the van. Sarah grabbed Maya's arm. We can't move. If we spook them now, Harris dies. Through the drone lens, Reed's face filled the frame, fury barely masked by control. He pocketed the briefcase and signaled for the trucks to roll. Engines growled, tires screeched through puddles. The caravan split, one truck east, another south, Reed's cruiser west. Alex nearly dropped the controller. They're scattering, they'll wash the trail clean. No, Maya whispered, gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. They just proved the network exists. Now it's our move. As the warehouse emptied, the drone caught the last clear image. Reed shaking Phillips's hand again, stormlight glinting off the cash envelope clutched between them. Inside the jail, Henderson removed his earpiece, eyes fierce. We've got him, on tape, on camera, on the record. Simone straightened in her chair, shoulders squared, eyes burning with a calm fire. Then tomorrow, when they drag me into that courtroom, I won't be the one on trial anymore. And outside, lightning tore across the Millfield sky, illuminating a city on the verge of watching its captain fall. Dawn crept over Millfield with thin grey light. The courthouse loomed against the sky, its stone steps slick from the night storm. News vans crowded the street, reporters rehearsing lines about the fallen defender, whose trial was set to begin. Inside, however, a different story waited to break. Simone Mitchell stood in chains at the defense table. Her suit, wrinkled from days in custody, did not diminish her posture. Shoulders back, gaze steady, she looked more like counsel than defendant. Reed Warren sat 3 rows behind the prosecution, polished uniform, silver hair immaculate. His smirk was back, the kind that told everyone the outcome was already written. Judge Howard Grant entered, gavel striking wood. Court is in session. District Attorney Wilson rose, voice booming. Your Honor, the people are prepared to prove beyond doubt that Ms. Mitchell transported 3 kilos of cocaine with intent to distribute. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Before Simone's weary lawyer could respond, the rear doors opened. Henderson stepped inside, flanked by men in dark suits. At the center walked Assistant U.S. Attorney Eden Richmond. She carried a thick folder, her presence cutting through the air like a blade. Your Honor, Richmond said, before this court proceeds, the United States moves to intervene. She handed the bailiff a document. Grant scanned the seal and paled. Richmond continued, her voice unwavering. We present a federal warrant for the arrest of Captain Reed Warren and associates, under charges of narcotics distribution, evidence tampering, and conspiracy pursuant to the RICO statute. Gasps surged, cameras clicked wildly. Reed's smirk shattered as 2 agents turned toward him. He half rose, hand twitching toward his holster, but Henderson's gun was already drawn. Don't, Henderson warned. Reed froze. Cuffs snapped around his wrists, his authority collapsing in seconds. Wilson sputtered. This is outrageous. No, Richmond cut him off. This is justice, and it has been a long time coming. The courtroom buzzed like a hive. Reporters bolted for the doors, eager to be first to break the story. Simone stood tall as her chains were unlocked. For the first time in a week, her wrists were free. She flexed her hands slowly, the red marks fading into resolve. Maya, seated in the front row, met her sister's eyes. Tears welled, but her smile was fierce. Simone gave the smallest nod. Confirmation that their plan, their father's plan, had worked. Judge Grant cleared his throat, voice unsteady. Given these developments, the charges against Ms. Mitchell are dismissed with prejudice. He struck the gavel, but the sound was lost under the roar of the room. Outside, the courthouse steps swarmed with cameras. Richmond faced the press, flanked by federal agents. Today marks the culmination of an 8-year investigation into systemic corruption within the Millfield Police Department. Captain Reed Warren and 11 officers have been indicted. Their scheme planted evidence, framed innocent citizens, and funneled seized narcotics back into criminal networks. Thanks to brave individuals who refused to stay silent, justice is finally being served. Beside her stood Simone, Maya gripping her hand. Flashbulbs exploded. Questions rained down. But Simone spoke only once, her voice cutting clear through the chaos. My father began this fight. Today, we finish it. Months later, Millfield changed. The department now operated under federal oversight. Henderson, appointed interim captain, implemented body cams, civilian review boards, transparent evidence protocols. Recruitment soared, especially among minority officers who once feared the badge. Tasha Williams, freed and exonerated, stood proudly at Simone's side as outreach coordinator for the new Thomas Mitchell Justice Initiative. At the ribbon cutting, Simone addressed the crowd. No one should face the machinery of law enforcement alone. This center exists so that truth has a home, and so that no one else's father, sister, or brother has to pay the price for silence. Applause rolled through the hall. Sarah Parker, no longer FBI but now lead investigator for the initiative, smiled from the front row. Alex Rodriguez adjusted the secure server system he'd built, ensuring whistleblowers could report without fear. Maya clutched her journalism award, earned for her series exposing Reed's crimes. That evening, Simone walked to the cemetery. The grass was wet, the sky finally clear. She knelt before the new headstone. Detective Thomas Mitchell, 1965-2017, died in the line of duty. She laid her father's watch beside the flowers. We finished what you started, she whispered. Your name is clean. And Reed will spend the rest of his life in prison. Behind her, footsteps crunched softly. Henderson stopped a respectful distance away. Your father would be proud, he said simply. Simone stood, brushing damp earth from her hands. There's still work to do. One system exposed doesn't fix the others. She turned once more toward the grave. But it's a start. Justice, Simone knew, was not a destination. It was a journey. And tonight the road was finally open. Thank you to everyone who typed justice and to all who shared their locations from around the world. Your global support means everything. If these stories inspire you, please subscribe to join our community and help us share more incredible tales of courage and justice. Until next time, keep believing in the power of truth.